All right. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I know I speak for Cindy, Anna, in expressing our sincere appreciation for you taking time to be with us today. We're certainly very excited about the topic and the discussion that will be taking place. As always, we've got a few housekeeping items we want to share up front. One, as you know, we are recording this, and so you'll be getting a recording of this event. We will be providing you with the PDF version of the slides that Fred will be going through, so that will be coming your way. And, you know, we have a great deal of content here today, rich in insights from our panelists, which potentially could take up to the full hour. But should you have questions, you can certainly use chat, and we will field them as best we can. So as we talk a little bit about ESA at the beginning, quickly, as you know, and most of you know, Cindy, our founder, in partnership with ADP over 6 years ago, began building an executive community, which now has over 1,200 participants in 20 cities. And ESA's focus and mission is to bring world-class thought leadership and exposure to innovative technology that is shaping the future of work. We bring CHROs, CIOs, and other work tech executives together and fundamentally believe that we all need to be coming together in lockstep, as Cindy says, with each other to deliver the kind of experience necessary to attract and retain talent. In addition to thought leadership, we offer our participants the opportunity to attend our work tech startup advisory meetings, where executives are exposed to next generation startup technologies and exposure to potential advisory board opportunities. And then finally, in January, ESA is now offering a board positioning membership to provide a curated portfolio of services, which we believe will strengthen your knowledge of what is involved in being on a board, expand your network, and ultimately, certainly increasing the probability of landing a board seat depending on where your interests and passions lie. Today, we are so excited to have our partner Segal with us. Fred is back. Excited to have Fred back. He was with us in December and in April, I believe, Fred. Maybe I'm missing another month, but Fred is the Senior Vice President at Segal, and Segal is a global HR technology and business consulting firm. Our topic, as you can see, round 2 of predictions regarding the future of talent, culture, and technology over the next 3 years. With Fred, we are honored to have 2 guest executives joining the conversation and sharing their experiences. Tim Juergensen is the Chief Employee Experience Officer for Covenant Health. He brings 25 years of experience in human resources, organizational development, and talent management. Tim's previous experience includes tenure as Vice President, Talent Management and Organizational Development for WellPath. Tim's healthcare experience also includes service as the interim CHRO at Columbus Regional Health. And prior to this, Tim served as the global leader for talent management for Cummins Inc. and as program manager, change management for Eli Lilly and Company. In addition, we have Sharon Paul, Chief People Officer at Kent. Kent is a $1 billion oil and gas engineering and construction service company. Kent has a global workforce of 12,000 employees in 26 countries. Sharon is responsible for talent acquisition, talent management, development strategies, total rewards, and employee engagement. She brings 30 years of HR executive experience, leadership experience. She currently serves on the board of directors for the Work Faith Connection, and she holds a BS in administration from Messiah College and an MS in human organizational science at Villanova University. I could go on, but so appreciative of these leaders, their experience, for Tim, for Sharon, for Fred, for their willingness to be part of this and helping us all focus a little bit more on how as we talk about these topics. So with that, I will turn it over to Fred. I'll stop sharing, Fred, and get it to your slides. Give me just a second.
Well, John, while you're doing that, a big thank you to you and ESA for this opportunity to lead this discussion on what is appearing on the horizon for organizations related to talent, culture, and technology. We plan to connect all 20 of the predictions within this deck in meaningful ways to culture and well-being, since they directly and indirectly affect the workforce, the workplace, and the very nature of work. I'd also like to thank our two panelists, Sharon Paul from Kent and Tim Juergensen from Covenant Health. I'm really delighted to have them on here today and all the preparation leading up to today, as well as Matt Holt from Dot Foods for his valuable insights also leading up to today. So really a quick commercial about my company. Segal is a business, HR, and benefits consulting company headquartered in New York City, and we've been around since 1939. Our mission to provide trusted advice that improves lives really requires us to have some perspective on where things are going. So a little bit about me. I'm a management, technology, and HR consultant, all wrapped into one at Segal. And I care about helping organizations develop a compelling vision and strategies that inspire their investors and their workforce. I also care about discovering practical ways to maximize current and future technology investments, ensuring organizations are identifying, leveraging, and rewarding the creative and innovative ideas within their ecosystems, and putting people's strengths to work to create high-performing teams that get results. And finally, thank all of you for attending with your own curiosity about the future. So as we move through the topics, we welcome your questions and comments. And as John said, please put them in the chat area. We may even have some questions for you in the chat area, so pay attention to that. And if you wouldn't mind, respond either through texting in the chat area or raise your hand and come off of mute. Next. So first, we're going to go back in time. So for the agenda for today, first we're going to go back in time to 2019, February of 2019, and briefly review predictions made 3 years ago. Next, we're going to reveal predictions for the next 3 years, along with leading indicators pointing to the future and their potential impact on organizational culture and employee well-being. There's an appendix in this deck with a rich set of lagging and leading indicators. You'll have access to this entire deck after today's session. And this session is really meant to be more conversational and less presentation. So I'm going to move through the first few slides really, really quickly. Next. So what were things like back in February of 2019? And what seems like 20 years ago now. So first of all, it was pre-pandemic. Terms like mask mandates, social distancing, double vaxxed and boosted, they weren't in our vocabulary. Social justice movements were really just starting to ramp up. Remote work was not really a thing. Zoom was not a verb. Zoom fatigue did not really exist. Employee well-being strategies were mostly one-dimensional, very focused primarily on physical wellness. Millennials were taking on more managerial and leadership roles. Gen Z was beginning to enter the workforce in a big way. Culture was considered important, but not really a top priority for many organizations. Social media had reached a new level of influence, basically the relative calm before the storm. Next. So new vocabulary emerged. Some of these words and phrases made the mainstream, like elbow bumps, early on as we reacted to the pandemic, while others came later as we started to proactively think about our future. Words like new normal and next normal. This new vocabulary also provided a preview of things to come relative to culture shifts and the need for broader well-being strategies. Next. So back in February of 2019, we developed a top 10 list of predictions. These are the first 5. The next slide will be the remaining 5. Again, back in February of 2019. We developed these after reviewing several analyst reports. Several. I have a really, really great research team. 2 of my colleagues are on, Chelsea Bell and Amanda Baker. They're part of that team, did a great job. We interviewed several clients and carefully considered the leading indicators that these were pointing to the future. All of these things are happening right now to some degree. All of these were somewhat in motion before the pandemic and have absolutely been accelerated these past 2 years. So in the spirit of holistic well-being, which is one of the underlying topics for today, I'm going to focus on number 2. Wellness strategies and solutions will become broader in nature. Well, we're seeing a big move towards holistic well-being right now. 25% of organizations have already embraced the need to do this. Next. So in the spirit of culture, which is the second underlying topic for today, I'm going to focus on number 9. Again, you're going to receive all of these slides after today's session. Culture will reemerge, but in a different form. Bottom up versus top down. That's the prediction. So we're now seeing the importance of team-based cultures unified by a common enterprise-wide set of values and beliefs. Merger and acquisition activity in the second half of 2020, all throughout last year, set new records. Many of them adding new talent, new capabilities, and new locations to the organizational profile and footprint, affecting culture and affecting well-being. The Great Resignation and the current Great Unretirement are creating challenges and opportunities with 5 generations that are now in our workforce. And finally, free agency is also testing our traditional notions of workforce and culture. Next. And now for the futuristic movie enthusiasts, I'm going to date myself here a little bit. Set your DeLorean to 2025 as we explore the next set of 3-year predictions. Next. So number 1, labor shortages will continue for several more years, creating more workload stress. Public-private partnerships will ramp up to meet the growing demand for more healthcare, high-tech, and skilled trade workers, among others. People will be expected to take on more diverse roles and in many cases be reskilled. In March of this year, there were 1.9 jobs available for each unemployed worker, far above the pre-pandemic ratio of 1.2 back in February of 2020. So John, before I move on, any questions or comments in the chat area?
No, we're good.
Okay, I'll keep checking with you.
Okay.
And by the way, pause me if anything comes in that you want me or Sharon or Tim to respond to. So number 2, remote, hybrid, and flexible work arrangements are here to stay as people re-geared their lives during the pandemic and really don't want to go back to the way things were prior. This is challenging how we enable our employees to feel a sense of belonging. So they're not in the office every day. They're not on site every day necessarily. 91% want a better work-life balance. And then number 3, baby boomer retirements and labor shortages will drive increased use of artificial intelligence, robots, automation, and analytics to capture and transition knowledge to the younger generations and to streamline highly manual work that's been around for, in many cases, decades. These technologies will not only change how processes are executed, they will also change how we make decisions. 85% of our workforce want technology to drive their future or be part of their future, ultimately the way they work. Next. So number 4, reactions to the vaccine mandates are raising many questions around societal safety versus individual preferences. Employers will develop their own individualized guidelines based on their particular workforce, locations, and their preferences. The moving targets these past 2 years have created emotional and mental stress for many, especially those caring for school-age children, family members at high risk, or aging family members. More than 1/4 of our workforce say they will not return to the office without mandate enforcement. It's a huge number. Moving on to number 5, the rise of the health consumer and increased utilization of telemedicine will continue to challenge the traditional patient primary care physician model and create a more competitive, consumer-friendly ecosystem with increased focus on health literacy, healthcare provider portals, and ultimately better outcomes. More focus is now being placed on health literacy and digital accessibility, for sure. 40% of consumers have switched healthcare providers because of a poor digital experience. 83% of physicians now offer virtual care. Compare that to only 13% 3 years ago. Number 6, organizations will need to digitalize key aspects, especially the customer journey of their business, or risk not being viable within the next 10 years. This will require new skills and collaboration across the organization, namely the customer relationship managers, IT, HR, operations, all working together with technology at the forefront. There will be a need for more specialization and skills, which will drive more recruiting standards, So looking for digital skills rather than just comparing on job titles. And we can expect 11% or greater increase in productivity through digital transformation, which is becoming even more critical given the current labor shortages, which some analysts are predicting could last for another decade. Next. So number 7, employee experience will become central to attracting, retaining, and engaging workers. Well, 53% of organizations are putting greater emphasis on employee experience throughout the whole life cycle, starting with onboarding, including well-being and mobility, for example. Gallup's recent survey found that the number of employees who think their employer cares about their well-being is at a record low of 25%. This just happens to align with a stat I provided earlier. Only 25% of organizations have embraced the need to address holistic well-being, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Number 8, ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance, will continue to rise in importance to address climate, societal, and ethical issues. Corporations will be required to report on several more metrics to satisfy increasing regulatory and legislative requirements, as well as to satisfy investors. Employees and job seekers are also looking carefully at your organization's positions and actions related to ESG. Number 9, data privacy will become a much larger issue as social media platforms receive more scrutiny. This will lead to the rise of more secured and private social media options and exchanges. And one stat I want to pull out here is 50% of current social media users are already opting for private mode. And then finally, number 10, DE&I and social justice movements will lead to pragmatic changes in workforce diversity, board member diversity, business financing, supply chain diversity, and corporate governance. So in addition to the humanistic elements involved in this, there is documented evidence that economics are positively impacted. Next. So with these predictions as a backdrop, and I know I went through them really, really quickly, let's start the panel discussion. So Sharon and Tim, if you wouldn't mind sharing your perspectives on culture and well-being and why they're important to you. And Sharon, if we could start with you, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here today. Thanks for having me. So culture is something that's been paramount. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
My organization is Kent Engineering and Construction, and we're somewhat of a newly formed company after a 100-year legacy. We bought a company 2/3 our size, and we wanted to start with this merger as we want to reinvent our entire organization. We wanted to create something that was new and exciting, and we looked at it as a reset opportunity, not just a merger, but like, let's just clean the slates and start over. And so we got a new CEO. They brought me on board to lead that effort, and culture was a very big part in attracting talent and really delivering on our profitability targets and our strategic goals. So we read some really compelling books and just said, culture's the way to go. We have got to put all our energy in an intentional strategy around employee culture. And the subline of that would be employee health and wellness. But culture is, from the very beginning, an initiative that we prioritize. So as a billion-dollar startup company, we thought the best way of going about this is really to let's go on a listening tour and go talk to our employees. We, as Fred mentioned earlier, we have about 12,000 employees, half of which are in what I'd call professional settings and workers and offices. The other half are skilled, semi-skilled laborers in the field on construction sites. So half are technology users, half not. So that posed some challenges. But we did work with a couple consultants. We brought them in and we structured a 4-month tour. And what that looked like in the middle of still COVID situation is we scheduled Zoom calls with up to 25 people per call. And we had different topics throughout the session. And Fred, I don't know if you want to advance to the next slide. Just to show.
Sharon, before we do that, Tim, if you could kind of chime in and your perspective on culture and well-being and why it's important to you and your organization, then we'll move into the journey. Yep.
Sure, I'm Tim Juergensen. I have the privilege to be Covenant Health's Chief Employee Experience Officer. And those words, Fred, as you mentioned, that term really resonated with me and our organization. We're a Catholic healthcare organization in 7 states. In New England, we have acute care facilities, post-acute care facilities, and especially in the acute care facility, those are actually systems. We're on track to double in size over the next 18 months. And you can just imagine the challenge in terms of COVID and how it really has forced inevitable change that was inevitable ahead of time. And it all focuses on our motto that the better the employee experience, the better the patient experience. Our employees are critical, and we changed our name, our function from HR to employee experience. And we have a very intentional strategy. Our architecture in terms of human resources consists of 5 centers of excellence, one of those being culture. And I know that we'll have some time to talk a little bit about key strategies that we're engaged in. I preparing for this, I step back for a second and think, man, I hope I'm not pushing my team too much here, because there's a lot of exciting things going on, and that excitement, I think for us has given us momentum, has helped us do more than maybe we thought we were capable of, especially over the past couple of years. But we still have a high hill to climb. We know that.
Well, Sharon and Tim, thank you for those introductions. And John, if we can move on. So Sharon, I think you started to answer the question, what triggered Kent's movement to redefine culture across the organization?
I got ahead of myself. Sorry about that. So we're a newly formed company, even though we're 100 years old, but through a big merger, we had a reset moment, new CEO, new strategy, ambitious plans. And so culture was really seen as the spine of the strategy, like something that really would foster talent attraction, retention. And we just really believed in, if you can get the culture right, all the outputs of productivity, customer service, and all our strategic goals would be met, and realized if we can get the culture right. So we did read some books and get inspired, talk to some consultants, and the place we chose to start is to go on a listening tour and really engage our workforce to help us shape and have their voice be very much heard and part of the creation process.
So if we could, John, if we go to the next slide, I think Sharon's about to walk us through the journey.
Yeah, thank you. So we came up with this map. We did find it on the internet. I don't know if I properly sourced it, but it was out there, and I thought this will work for us, because we wanted to know what are all the component parts that make up a culture. And these are the categories that we really focused on. We looked at stories and myths that we're going to tell that become part of our new company, the symbols and where they are, they're on bulletin boards, or they're in actions. We looked at power structures, organizational structures, and control systems. And so all of these things we thought were instrumental to come up with what are all the kinds of things what are the kinds of questions we want to ask our employees that will help us shape how to create each one of these intentionally to build our strategy. So we did have Zoom calls throughout the world, 25 per call. We did that for 4 months, and each call was targeted towards one of these categories and engaging employees with whiteboard experiences, breakout sessions, so they could actually feel involved. We captured all their notes, and then we consolidated all that to take it back to the employees to show them what they told us. So if you can go to the next slide, I'm giving this to you really quickly. But this is a consolidated format of literally what we went back to our employees with after our listening tour to say, these are the things we heard you say, and that really resonated. And we were able to feed that back to employees and look for confirmation. We had a global worldwide town hall. We were able to present this to them in a lot more specific detail than, all jumbled on the slide. But it was really great that people were like, yeah, we did say that. That does resonate. And so this became the foundation of our culture work, knowing We now have our compass. We know what direction we're headed. Our employees' voices have been heard. And now how do we stand this up? And that's really the phase that we're at now, is to put in, embed this in the organization. And we did come up with a steering committee. We've got employees participating on that steering committee, and we've got lots of key projects that are targeted and budgeted for to actually start addressing and putting in place some of the very things that people say they want, either want more of, or they want less of, or things that don't exist today. What do we want to put in place? And some simple examples of, just to give you, would be, we have a number of employees in camp housing because they're on construction sites. And, we take it for granted that what's important to those in camp type settings versus office settings are very, very different. And so what's the most important thing to our camp employees is they want Wi-Fi access. They want to be able to call their families. They want uniforms that are high quality, that are comfortable and they fit, and that they're proud to wear our logo on. So those were some of the things that we heard from our camp employees. And our office employees wanted more remote working and more flexible work hours. They wanted less bureaucracy, less governance, more flexibility, more voices in decisions. And so these are just a couple of examples. Some early wins that we did was, what are the beliefs that we want to create, like the corporate values, because we didn't have that as well. And if we want to advance to the next slide, I'll show you the feedback.
Hey, Sharon, while we're doing that, there are a couple of questions in the chat area from Rick and Erica. And I think you answered the first half of Rick's question, but the second half is around what sort of interventions are you initiating to improve culture?
Okay, the interventions, well, we are creating a two-way communication vehicle. Our challenge is technology right now. For those that have it, we have a way through, it's like a social media site called Work Vivo that we're using. And employees are invited to call out when they spot something that doesn't fall into the culture that we said we're creating. They're able to bring it forward and say, I'm challenging this. Is this really the culture we want to create? Like reserved parking spots, we said we don't want that. Why do we still have that in this office? And so when people were able to bring that forward, either publicly through our social media site or privately to their manager or to their HR person, we're able to address those things. And then we're equipped to go back out and tell everyone, look, this is something that surfaced and this is what we did about it. And we invite more and more feedback so that we can make this really embedded in the organization.
Thank you, Sharon. The second question is from Erica. Can you please share some of the questions that were asked during the listening tour?
I don't have all of them in front of me. There was probably over 500 in total, to be fair.
Wow.
Each workshop we did, we thought, well, let's ask different questions so we can really spread a very big net and gather as much feedback as we can. And they were all up under these categories. And so I don't have them to share today, but I'm happy to talk to someone offline if you want to reach out and give me your contact information, and I can certainly provide some of those to you.
Great, thank you, Sharon.
Yep.
So we want to move to the next slide, or?
Yeah, yes, please. So in order to create the culture, we knew we had to be really clear about what is the purpose behind our company. It's different than a mission statement, and we really felt you couldn't have a culture without having an overarching reason for having a business in the first place. We were really inspired by Simon Sinek and some of his work on LinkedIn. What's the why behind your organization's purpose? And it's more than just making money. It's why are you in existence today? And we wanted to create something really compelling. And again, we engaged our employees in helping to shape that. And once that became clear, we knew we also had to stand up corporate values. We decided not to use the word values, and we went with something that we call our beliefs. And these are our core beliefs and the guiding principles around the beliefs that will help us fully realize our company's purpose. So all of this is all hung together with our company's purpose, our core beliefs, principles, and the culture that will support all of this being fully realized. And this is just a snapshot of our core beliefs that our employees basically, through their input that we've created.
Well, let's try. I love all of these. One that really stands out to me is we speak our truth and hold it lightly. So I'm assuming that that means that you're willing to be influenced.
Yeah, it just means that there's other ways of doing things than just the way you may have in your head, and we're all shaped by our experiences. And so just because you had a certain experience doesn't mean your truth means it's the one and only way to do something. So we're really trying to create a culture of open-mindedness and realizing and educating our employees and our managers that, you know, don't fight to win arguments and don't push your way through, which really ostracizes employees when they feel like they have a voice to shape something. Be open-minded and be open to other points of view and other ways of working. So these are the guiding principles that support some of these beliefs. The real challenge we have right now is training our managers and onboarding new hires to say, these are the kind of behaviors that we're looking for. This is what we are expecting you to behave as an employee and as a manager. And that's really the stage we're at right now. It's getting super clear on not just who's technically qualified to come work for us, but who's also qualified and will fit into our culture and into our core beliefs in working the way we want them to work, the total suitability fit. So that's going to become very much embedded in who we promote, who we hire, who we pick as successors and our succession planning and things like that. It really just becomes part of the very fabric of our organization, and we want it to really matter. So our employee rewards, recognition programs are all tied to demonstrating these core beliefs in action through behaviors.
Awesome.
And that's a quick summary of the work we're doing. Our journey's really just begun. The anniversary of our merger will happen August 1st. So we're not quite at the 1 year mark, and we started this literally last September. So it's been a ton of work, but it's been really invigorating to get our employees involved and for them to start seeing the outputs from their input.
Again,
I could speak all day about this, but I'll stop talking and see if there's any questions.
I know. Yeah. So any other questions, please put them in the chat area. We can always come back to it as we move forward if you have some thoughts that you want to put in there. And so with that, Tim, is there anything you'd like to add relative to Covenant Health's culture journey that you're on?
Sure, happy to, Fred. I think, as again, I think some of these changes and the importance of culture prior to COVID, I think everybody knew about that and, have been on some sort of a journey. But COVID itself had a huge impact on our organization, especially in healthcare, especially with retention, volume, the business end of it. And for a Catholic healthcare organization, one of the things that we realized quickly is that the answer was sitting there right in front of us in terms of our mission and our values. And I saw a question there in terms of, what are metrics for culture? And we look at culture as being a place where people want to work and stay. And so our metric for culture, among many, but the main metric, we keep it pretty simple, and it's retention. So in terms of really understanding whose shoulder that lies on is based on our mission and values is leaders. And one of the things you talk about scientific evidence, there's a publication called Compassionomics. And it's basically scientific evidence that caring makes a difference. Caring improves us as an organization, and who needs to be able to do that? Who do we need to educate and give the tools and hold accountable to do that is our leaders. So a couple of things. I'll just run through some of the initiatives, but in terms of just our leaders need to know how to connect. And one of the things that we've done was stay interviews. And stay interview isn't just having a quick conversation with your team member. By the way, stay interview is about asking that employee what they're excited about learning, what they're excited about doing, what they're not excited about doing, and as a leader, what can I do to do a better job? And just to you talk about results. In 2021, while all our competitors turnover was getting worse and worse and worse. In 2021, we reduced turnover very close to 9.7%. There was obviously an economical impact on that, but also in terms of our ability to recruit, that made a big difference as well. We've continued to evolve that in our second year, and I was just in a meeting just before this where we're ahead of our goals in the second year of using that stay interview initiative as a way to help leaders connect with their team members.
So Tim, if I could pause you for a moment, on the front end for new hire candidates, and Sharon, you may want to chime in on this one as well. So you're defining your culture, you're getting results. It's early on, you're defining your metrics. How do you know if somebody's a fit for your culture? Or is there a way that do you care about that? Do you?
Absolutely.
So how do you assess for that?
Absolutely. So and again, part of this initiative is teaching hiring managers and our recruiting team how to recruit for motivational fit. And we have created what's called a realistic job preview for our top 20 positions, clinical and non-clinical, and have taught our recruiters and our hiring managers how to not only look for core competencies in a deliverables-based off of a deliverables-based position profile, but also how to interview for motivational fit for that. So we make sure that people come with the expectation to stay at least 1 year. So we're very clear on that. And again, it's an evolution, but and the other thing is I think our hiring managers have really appreciated getting the training and actually having a structured, intentional process for doing that.
Sharon, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do. In fact, it's interesting you brought that up because we just tried that out on a certain project where we worked with our client to put together a real day in a life, realistic expectation of what it's going to be like to be in some of these key roles. And it really was, I think, a very strong success story. While it was a pilot for us, it's definitely something we will be scaling and doing for many more projects to come.
Great. Well, thank the two of you. Anything else you want to add on culture, Tim, before we move on?
I think the other thing, and we're probably all experiencing that, and again, in Catholic healthcare, you can just imagine, but diversity, equity, and inclusion. We had a couple of bishops that even said, well, that's not, that term isn't in the Catholic terminology, set of terminology, but we did it anyway. And we base that on 4 key gospel values. And those gospel values are radical inclusivity, restoration, and that also obviously follows our mission in terms of healthcare and healing for the whole person. Listening deeply. We've certainly talked a lot about empathy. That's the word of the day these days. And then finally, accompaniment, in that we want employees and patients of no matter who they are to feel like this is a great place to be, whether I'm getting care or whether I'm a caregiver. That's really important, and it's really helped us take stock in terms of getting our own house in order. And our own house is not in order, and we're working on that. It was really important for us to look ourselves in the mirror as an executive team and as an organization and actually say our house is not in order. And so that's another key area among many, but that one key area that we've dived into and I think made a lot of progress this year.
Well, Tim, we've talked about this many times. Healthy organizations require healthy, engaged, and retained workforce to remain healthy. And I think that's a nice bridge to the next topic. If we could move on to the next slide and the next one after that. So we've talked about culture as a way of retaining, realistic job previews. We've talked about, a variety of things around that. Well-being, if we don't have a healthy workforce, so many of the things that we do are not going to produce the results. We got to have a healthy workforce. Well-being and wellness are not the same thing. They do go hand in hand and are highly interdependent. For example, physical problems can lead to mental and emotional issues and can create financial challenges. Financial challenges can lead to higher stress levels and possibly physical problems like high blood pressure. And then finally, mental, emotional, and social issues can lead to poor dietary, exercise, and spending habits. Just to sort of set the stage for what we're about to talk about. So if we can move on to the next slide. So Tim, hospitals have been on the front line since the pandemic began, and we are so grateful for our healthcare workers. Now, how have you helped your employees cope and manage physically, emotionally, mentally, and financially?
Well, thanks for asking that, Fred. I'll share just a couple of examples. One of the things that we've had to really look at very carefully is span of control. And again, in healthcare, especially acute care facilities, it's common to find, especially in the clinical areas, leaders that have 100 direct reports. Now, I just said earlier that we said it's important for leaders to connect with their team members. But I have 100 direct reports and I've got caregiving to get done, and you're asking me to do a stay interview with 100 people. And so we knew we needed to look at our organizational design in terms of those departments. And again, I won't share the details, but we've had some success with that. We're piloting a couple of new models in our nursing area and rad tech, but it's made a difference. It's made a radical difference in turnover in those departments in which we've piloted that. So span of control is one. Secondly, EAP. I think EAP is one of those things that's got a stigma of and we looked at our utilization with EAP. It was almost none. And so we needed to redefine what that, and that's all about well-being. That's all about behavioral health. And so we've blown that design up. And one of the things that we've done is invested in our workforces in each of our facilities and put an on-the-ground person there that is dedicated to connecting employees and giving them access like they've never had before to those types of services, especially the behavioral health services that EAP provides. Those are two areas. The only other areas we know that staffing, as you mentioned earlier, it's never going to go back to what it was, which means we need to step back and take a look at our care delivery model, and it needs to change. How we delivered care 2 years ago, we'll never staff to that. So if we're not innovative in our design in terms of how we deliver care, we won't survive. So we're in the process of and technology is going to be a big part of that, taking care of patients at home versus in the hospital. How might we do that? And how we might use technology to help us do that. So those are three key areas right now that hopefully, and we do have some evidence, is kind of helping employees feel successful, having a sense of purpose, and really being motivated when they come to work.
So Tim, there's a question in the chat area around span of control. So we know 100 is not a good number. What is a better number?
So our initial goal, it was 25 to 1, which is a lot better than 100 to 1. And with some folks, one department was around 120 to 1. So we've redesigned where we've gotten to that ratio. It's not an ideal ratio. I can't imagine if I had 25 direct reports. But although for those folks it's relevant, and they seem to be thriving around, almost relieved with that new design. So 25 to 1 is our initial start goal there.
So is that 2-stay interviews a month for a year, or is that 4-stay interviews for a month for 6 months and then you
So-
start back over again?
So what we're doing, the focus of more than one stay interview is on first-year employees. We want employees to commit. So we're doing a stay interview at 60 days, at 6 months, and at the end of 1 year for every new employee. And again, it's systemized. We've technology to scale that, so we know what to use with the data. And in fact, we've even taught leaders how to sit down with their folks that have high turnover, to have those conversations about finding out why, et cetera. There's a lot to that. For employees 1 year that have been there 1 year, we're asking our employees or our leaders to do stay interviews once a year.
Great. Thank you, Tim. So just to add to that, so Matt Holt from Dot Foods provided some insights into their holistic well-being program. So from a physical health standpoint, they've accelerated the use of on-site health clinics at all their facilities and are having a lot of success with that. They're partnering with the Mayo Clinic for complicated health issues, since many things were delayed during the pandemic, many procedures. So they've partnered with the Mayo Clinic if it's a complicated health issue. They have a comprehensive and proactive approach to that. Concierge is assigned to you. You go to a single location where all the right specialists are in one place, which compresses the time frame from diagnosis to treatment. And they do subsidize the travel and living expenses to go to that location for the family. From a mental and emotional health standpoint, they're training managers to remove the stigma, Tim, much like you said earlier. This is aided by their people-centric and accessible leaders culture. Sounds familiar, Tim. They upgraded their EAP provider to get better quality, and they do have a chaplain program at all locations. These are care counselors. And from a financial health standpoint, they're providing financial counseling and training on the use of financial planning templates. They utilize a third-party financial advisor for one-on-one coaching on demand. And this coach is prohibited from selling investment products. So it's pure financial coaching. They start retirement coaching early. So when you're in your 20s, they start working with you on retirement planning. And they do have packets for ages 50 to 59 and 60 and over, retirement preparation packages. And they have a person who went through this process and retired who is available to coach you on how to use those packets. And finally, they have a crisis fund for their employees. And they do something really, really interesting. They use analytics to identify hotspots, to proactively determine if they need to push some education to individuals and engage them in a really kind of a soft way, but at least make sure they're aware of what's available to them. So with that, if we could move on to the next. So I think, stressors are coming from many different places, especially if your workforce consists of site workers and office workers. And Sharon and Tim, in your case, you have both. From a solutioning standpoint, one size may not fit all. Again, from a holistic well-being standpoint, especially if we have a combination of international locations, site and office workers, and remote hybrid work locations. So if anyone has experience with international locations from a well-being strategy standpoint, if you wouldn't mind either keying it in the chat area or raising your hand, we'd love to hear from you if that's an area we're definitely exploring. And with that, let's move on to the next slide. So ultimately, who's responsible for holistic well-being in an organization? Well, everyone's responsible. Leaders need to prioritize and make this visible. Tim and Sharon, you're doing a great job of that. Managers need to operationalize and reinforce it. So it's one thing to have a strategy, but then to operationalize it and make it part of the fabric, that's another thing. And that takes hard work, 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes each day. And HR needs to enable and encourage it. 85% of employers say well-being program has high impact on engagement, recruitment, retention, and company culture. Well-being and culture go hand in hand. And finally, 70% of employees would participate in workplace wellness programs if provided. Workplace wellness programs if provided. Let's see if we have any questions in the chat or comments in the chat area. So we got span of control. We've covered that one. So here's an interesting question. Are you using or considering the use of augmented reality or AI to improve delivery of health? Are you considering these technologies in the improvement of employee experience? So Sharon or Tim, either one of you want to take that one on? Augmented reality or AI to deliver health care and or to improve employee experience?
Well, my company is not, we're not quite at that point. So I can say I'll pass that question over.
Tim?
Yeah, I think that there are definitely opportunities. I know with Christie Lamke's firm that we looked at, and another firm as well, we've looked at this whole idea in terms of mindfulness, and actually at some time in the future, it's probably down the road for us, but the use of AI in terms of creating a whole nother world within your workspace, you know, and it's pretty impressive what technology has been able to bring to the workplace in terms of AI. I think, again, we need to embrace this because it is part of our future. It's amazing to see, like what Meta, you know, is starting to. I saw a commercial last night on TV that basically saying you're not going to know what's real and not real. So I think there's absolutely opportunities to provide using technology like that to provide our employees with an opportunity to connect at work in a different way, you know. So
yeah, I mean, Meta's already being used for training for healthcare workers.
Right.
Yeah.
Fred,
Right.
I wanted to just, when you talk about international, one of the things that we've realized in terms of recruitment, that 2 years ago, our talent pool was regional around all of our facilities. With the change in the workspace today, the kind of that new world at work with remote and hybrid roles that weren't even part of the organization, at least Covenant Health 2 years ago, it's created an international recruitment talent pool. So we've gone from regional to international. And I would say that by the end of this year, we'll probably have brought on 150 nurses from the Philippines. And it's been, and there's a retention strategy built into that because they sign on for 3 years. We take care of all of their immigration and those types of things. But that wouldn't have happened 2 years ago.
Thank you, Tim. So as we wrap up this piece, Sharon, is there anything you'd like to add, you know, relative to Kent's approach to holistic well-being?
I mean, we're just beginning our journey, so we have a long way to go. But the one thing that seems to take traction is because we are in so many different countries, the culture and the ethnicity and the religions of our workforce has played a very big factor, many of which don't want to speak about their problems and willingly call an EAP hotline because of those kinds of factors. So we are exploring different things that our EAP provider can actually provide that's I call non-traditional, such as we want a point of contact in every country from our EAP that can visit our offices on the ground, that kind of is more representative of the workforce there and is not calling from the United States who's white Anglo-Saxon, but somebody that's more representative of the local employee workforce. And then I think the last point I want to make is we're really getting a lot of traction around training, using our EAP provider to train our managers on signs and symptoms of mental health concerns. We've had a number of suicides, unfortunately, and we just don't feel like we're really touching the population that needs the most help. And so we're trying to train our line managers to be more aware of some of the high alert signs and symptoms of somebody in distress, and to know what to do when they do find someone in that situation and what resources are available that they can bridge and help get that person to the help they need. So that's a primary initiative for us this year.
Thank you, Sharon. You know, testimonials go a long way as well, to the extent people are willing to provide those testimonials. And what I'm seeing in international companies is make sure that they have real diversity in those testimonials. Anything anyone else wants to add in the chat area before we wrap up here? Okay. We got some really good questions and comments in the chat area. Thank you so much, everyone. So John, if we can move on to the kind of the last slide. Thank you. So hopefully you're all leaving today's Back to the Future discussion with some confirmation that what you're already doing is well positioned for the future, or maybe you have some slight adjustments to make. We certainly thank you for your curiosity and great participation today. Look forward to more discussions on these important topics. My contact information is on the screen, as well as my QR code. So if you'd like more information on the research that we've performed to date, or just want to continue the conversation, I'd love to hear from you. And with that, John, I'm going to thank you as well and pass it back to you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Fred and Tim and Sharon. I think we spent time prior prepping this to make sure that this time was valuable for everybody and helped with answering some of the hows, right? How do we attack a lot of the things that we're hearing about? And hopefully we've accomplished that. I promise the recording and a PDF version of Fred's slides, which you've seen, that will come out to you today. And lastly, I just want to also point out that we will be doing our first of many wellness series events. The first is starting June 29th. And over the next 4 months, this series will focus on well-being, showcasing the best of the best benefit innovation. And we're also thankful that Segal will be one of our sponsors. So please look at our events page for the opportunity to register. And again, the first one is June 29th. So sincere thank you again for everybody's time, for you, Fred, and for Tim and Sharon. Thanks for everything. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the day, and be safe.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.